Hello, I'm Dr. Lawrence W. Moore, and welcome to Episode 2 of Learning Electronic Music Production with Reason. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the ReDrum Drum Computer. ReDrum is a device in Reason that allows you to have a variety of drum kits that you can load, and within these drum kits you can sort out what parts of the kit that you want to have in the kit. At the same time, it allows you to pull in your own drum samples if you make them or have them. In the future, we'll learn how to make our own drum samples, but in this episode, we're going to see how ReDrum works, and so how you can use some of the factory preset drum kits and samples that Reason comes with. It also has a built-in pattern player that allows you to arrange your own drum patterns and loops and store them within the ReDrum device and put them in your sequencer as well. So, it's a rather complete all-around drum sample recorder, player, as well as sequencer, and it's worth checking out. Okay folks, so what we're going to do is look at ReDrum this time. I've already kind of used ReDrum to add to the little musical idea I did last time. I took out the extra effects, I just left in the one reverb and the echo box, and I've kind of improved it. But we're going to actually look at ReDrum first and then look at how I used it. But to look at ReDrum first, I'm just going to create a new one here. Instruments. It's under Reason Devices. And ReDrum. Drum. Called Drum Computer or something. Yeah. I have different names for it. But maybe I should call it a drum computer. Okay. So here it is. I'm going to do this because this drum kit in it now, its generic one, the one that gets called up at first, is the one that will be easiest to hear how things work. So it has 10 different drum samples loaded into it. You can change them through these menus up here, and you can change the whole kit through this here. But each kit, you can change, the different parts in it. So you can save the whole kit, and it'll save what parts were in that kit that you made, and so forth. We're going to have an episode in the future where I tell you about how to make some drum samples. But right now we're just going to deal with how ReDrum works. So anyway, these samples line up with keys on the keyboard. The C below middle C is this one. Usually it's a kick. We hear that there. That could be a little stronger. Let me go up to the mixer, make it a little louder. Should be this track here. There we go. Okay, so, and then C sharp. Oh, this thing needs some compression. It does fortunately have levels on it here. I can turn this snare down. Oh, that's still pretty darn loud. There we go. Yeah, there we go. And of course the next key up is usually a rim shot, and the next one up is some sort of shaker. Then usually you do have your toms in this area here. Medium, high, and low. And then up here I'm now on the D key. No, sorry, G. So here's like a hi-hat close, hi-hat open, and ride. Now in some kits it may not be exactly the same things, although usually down here you want to put something like a kick. If it's some more electronic sounding thing or some like underground kit thing that's electronified and more ambient, then you may have different sounding things here, but they should be kind of related to the standard kit arrangement that we have here. Now I know in a lot of MIDI kits, after the snare you have some hi-hats here, but not in ReDrum. So anyway, let's look at these channels here. First of all, at the top, you have mute and solo buttons. So you can mute it, you can solo it. If you just want to hear one part, you solo it. If you want to take some parts out, you mute them. And then you have a trigger here that lets you hear what that sound is. Next, this is the loading area for loading in a sample. Like if you hit this, your browser will open and you can select the part of the kit you'd really want here. And usually it's going to be, you want to keep something kick oriented in there. I'm going to close the browser though. We're just going to stay with what we have in here. Down here, of course, is where you can load up a different set, like a whole different drum kit. And then, of course, you can change what's in the drum kit by loading the individual samples here. This is a recording mechanism where you could record in some sound on the fly. I'm not going to hit it because I don't want to do that. But I prefer, when I want to make my own drum samples, to do them like in an external software where I kind of put them together, like either through synthesis, or if it's a recording, record it in and then shape it, clean it up, EQ it, and then get it ready for here. I don't like to just record it straight in. But in any case, you can do that if you want to. And then here's two knobs in case you have two different samples to balance them together. And then here is the pan in between. Now typically you want your kick to be center. But this allows you to spread out like the snare a bit. So the shaker, hi-hats, and toms, spread them out. Next you have here level. This is a fairly soft kick, so I'm going to keep it there. But as you saw, I turned down the snare. Now the toms are a little strong. The idea is to try and even them out a bit. This is your chance of mixing it kind of here. But there are ways that you can kind of like record these into separate tracks. Like if you're recording it real time, you can record these into separate tracks down below in your sequencer, just like we did with the first kit up here where I had separate track paths. Well, they're not separate tracks, but I guess subtracks you would call it. And then you can solo them and mute the others or whatever, and then export each one individually, so that if you want to mix it in other software, you can export your different drum tracks separately, and then you can have a lot more control over mixing them. But I like to keep the levels pretty much in proportion with one another. But of course, as you add more instruments in your overall mix here, you might want to change some of these levels as your mix gets more complex. So anyway, that's level. And then here, this is a velocity response control. Typically, when you hit a key softer, you want it to be not as strong. Soft, strong, like that. And usually to get that, you do turn it towards the right side. If you put it in the middle, it lessens the response. Here, let me get it in the middle there. Now it's a strong response no matter what. I can hit it soft or hard, and it's really rising to about the same amplitude. If I turn it left, now what it's doing is it's going to be stronger if I hit it softer. Oi! That came bursting out. Let's turn it down a little bit, but still on the left side, so stronger when I'm softer. When I hit it harder, it sounds softer. So it's like the inverse. I'm going to keep it where it was over here, because that's what I'm used to. That's typically what you use. Then over here, we have our length. Now this is something where you can, like, when you record a sample in or you put in your own sample, if you don't like how long it lasts, you can shorten it. Let's do it with the snare. Or this rim shot, because it rings out more. You see there, I shortened it. And over here is where you say how the amplitude gets treated. If you have it on this ramp setting here, it puts a linear release on it. Now if you put it on the square, it like kind of cuts it off rather than ramping it off or fading it off. So that's where you can adjust some of the finer aspects of it. Now there'll be cases where obviously you want to use the ramp, definitely for toms, because they do have a ringing out to them. So next we have here, I just want to make sure I'm on the same instrument. Alright, so now this is its pitch. So you can adjust that a little bit. I'm going to keep it in the middle there for that sound. And then down here we have the ability to adjust this frequently is a tone adjust. Depending on the sample, depending on how its tone's constructed, when you move it one way or another, if it's emphasizing the brights and there aren't much brights there, or the higher frequencies, then it'll kind of disappear on you. And when you turn it the other way, if there's a much low frequency there, it'll disappear on you. Let me hear this tone on the kick. There, now the lows are emphasized. But as I turn this up, you hear some more of the middle range frequencies come in. Then when you turn it all the way up, you hear the brights in. But if the sound itself has frequencies primarily in a certain area, don't be surprised if things disappear on you when you adjust the tone. And this adjusts how the tone responds to velocity. So if I have the velocity set upwards here, you see as I hit it harder, it sounds brighter. It turns tone up in frequency as you hit it harder. If I do the opposite and turn it to the left, it gets darker as you hit it harder. Goes to the lower end of the tone. So those are things that you can use to fine adjust your samples. It's good to play around with those a little bit and just get a feel for how they sound. And then especially as you use different samples, they'll of course have different effects depending on what is the frequency content of that sample. Next we have some differences here in these two drum samples, because these are for some tom effects. So let me get on the tom here. Which one is this? Here we go. These are these two keys here. And I'm trying to follow it, the F and F sharp. Okay, so once again, it starts with its pitch, but it gives you an adjustment for the pitch that the other channels don't have. And that is a bend adjustment. So for example, I'm playing the right one. Yeah, good. Let's turn up the bend. It kind of starts higher and then gets lower over the duration of the sound. Pew! You know, it's falling off. So this is the degree to which you bend it up to start the note that you're playing. And of course it's the opposite, the other direction. There we go. And then down here you have your pitch bend rate This is the speed at which it does the bend. If I turn it to the left, I'm doing it part way to the left here. And let's put the bend up. So you hear it fall off a little slower. Pew, pew. We turn this up. That's really fast. Don't really hear the bend much anymore. There we go. You hear it a little slower. Alright, so that's how you adjust the speed of it. And then you can have that related to your velocity. If I turn this up, I want this to be more in the middle then, because your velocity now is going to be kind of controlling the rate. So here I'm hitting softer. Then I hit harder. I needed to turn it up more to hear the effect more. But basically soft, slower rate. Hard, faster rate. So this allows you to have your velocity of hitting the key control the rate of that bend. Okay, so those are different for these two channels. So that's really how these sample channels work in ReDrum. Next, we have the pattern machine down here. Now, everything I've been doing so far can be just recorded in. You could just record in what you play into normal tracks into the sequencer down below, down here. So this track I could record in kick or whatever, and if I want to have things on separate tracks, I could record kick here, snare here, go up to the plus sign, record rim shot here, and so forth. And that would be how that works, you know, if you wanted to use it live, just like I did with Kong in the last episode. And then you're dealing with normal quantization and playing it in on time, editing, and stuff. So you can use it really as, you know, just a drum kit patch, so to speak. But it also has a pattern machine on it. And this is how it works. Those of you who've used step drum machines before, this would give you an idea. Basically, you have 16 different steps here. By default, it's set to 16th note. That means what note value, rhythmic note value, is each step representing. So if it's set to 16th note and you have 16 steps here, in 4/4 time, this is one measure. So you have 4 16th notes for one beat, 4 for the next beat, third beat, and then the last 4 for the fourth beat. That's the way I'm going to use it right now, just so you can see how it works. Let's say we want a straight kick rhythm. I need to highlight the kick track here next to the number. That means I'm now programming it. So let's do 1, 2. That'll be a kick on each beat, according to the tempo I have set. Alright, so now if I want to throw in some snare, I click this here. Here's the snare. Let's do, this will sound pretty straight. Let's put this here on an upbeat. There we go, we have it on. I'm a little bit off, hold on here. There we go, like that. Now that's like a drum per eighth note. Kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. Pretty boring. Could turn up the snare a little bit now. Not much though. Now let's say I like this in here, but I'm going to replace this with toms. I mean not toms, with a rim shot. Like I'll replace these two with rim shots. I click on the rim shot channel, and put the notes in. Right here. It's a little loud. Oh, that's length. Sorry. There we go. And then let's say I want to put in a shaker. How about eighth notes? 1, 3. That means every other step here. And then, you know, cymbals towards the end. How about this? Put it on 2 and 4. Now, another thing you can do, you see over here you have some strength that you can put on it. This is really like a velocity. And so I could put a soft hit, like maybe for the last one, just put a little hit before it. There we go. You can also put a hard hit on things. I don't think it'll sound good on this. Maybe I want to emphasize the first kick drum. So let's make it a red hard hit. That's a little strong. I'm going to turn it back down. Of course, you can adjust your velocity settings here to make it not as strong. But I'm going to keep it like this. So that's the idea. That's how this works. And what you can do, we have 4 banks of which you can store 8 patterns. So if I go here, I'm not hearing anything now because I didn't put in a pattern here. But you could put in a different pattern here, like a shifted rhythm. Let's do something. I'll keep the straight kick. And then put a double kick here. Alright, now I'm going to go back and see what I have on the snare here. I just have a hit in the middle. So I'm going to keep that pretty much the same here on the other pattern. Let me make sure it's on the right part of the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Here, it should be there. And maybe put 2 here on this one. So it'll be a slightly different rhythm. So let me see this drum channel. What do I have on the rim shot in this one? I have, okay, on the upbeats, a beat 1 and 3. So I go back over here. And maybe in this one I'll leave it like that. Alright, but maybe on this one I want to have a little more emphasis, like a couple more cymbal hits or something. I think on this one I have it on the upbeats of, let's check on the first pattern. My cymbal taps are on beat 2 and 4. Okay, so on this one I'll make it on beats 2, 4, but I'll have a double hit here. And now I had a shaker on the first one. So let's see it. So let's do on this one, same thing. Except right here, I'm going to do a double hit at the end. Okay, so now I can turn off run. When you decide you have patterns that you like, this is what you do. Go down to the sequencer view. Now, any instrument that lets you have patterns, or any device that lets you have patterns, you can go up here, create pattern lane. Click that and it makes a lane for your pattern. Now you could still be on the arrow tool up there at the top, and then double click in your pattern. Now my pattern is really one measure long, so you see a vertical line here showing that each measure the pattern's repeating. But you could say how long the pattern lasts. Now I have two patterns, so if I double click this, this is Bank A pattern 1. Now let's make another. This will be Bank A pattern 2. So now I'm going to mute my other tracks because this has nothing to do with what I've been sequencing. We'll get back to that in a minute, but right now let's just hear these. And now it'll change to the other pattern here. Slight variation. But you can have patterns that put in fills and stuff, for example, or ends of things. Right now we're dealing with one measure patterns. You can make them longer. This is pattern length here. How many steps do you have in a pattern? Let's make this one 32. That adds essentially a second measure to it. There we go. Now, when you add that extra bit, if you hit run, you'll hear your first measure of the pattern, and then the second measure will be blank. What you need to fill it in is you need to throw this switch here. So now it's displaying steps 17 through 32. So now I can put them in here. I missed. This one's off. There we go. Now, I don't want to go through, because I'm just giving you a tutorial here, I don't want to go through, I guess, putting it all in. Oh, what the heck. Let's put more in. Oh, I thought I was on the shaker, and I'm not. Oh, I'll leave that in like that. What the heck? Sometimes it's fun just to go through, throw some things in, and see what you get. That's where you get some variety. Now, when you want to use that down in the sequence view, you'll see that now for pattern 2, it's 2 bars long. So it'll play 1 through 16 and 17 through 32 like that. So that's how she works. You have up to 64, so you could put in 4-bar things if you're on 16th note. Now let's see if we speed it up. Speed it up means turning it up. Now it represents the 32nd note, which means down here in the sequencer, it's really... Okay, here's the other pattern here. So now they're 1 measure long again. But listen to this. It's twice as fast. So it adjusts the measure length for you in here as you change these divisions. You could slow it down, 8th note, now it'll be half as fast as the original. Hold on. I'll just play it here. Okay. Alright, so that's the general idea how this works. Now I'm going to delete it because this has nothing to do with my song. But it was easier for me to demonstrate it using sounds like that are a little more conventional. Okay, so now we're back to just what I have for this track. So, as you know, last time with Kong, I was playing some kind of more ambient, glitchy kit sounds here. And they had a certain routine for them. You know, it almost had its own kind of sequence, rhythmic feel to them. And so I adjusted the tempo to 70, and now it kind of locks in a little better. And at the same time, with the new ReDrum track that I put in, which is up here, this is a compressor to keep its output levels a little bit more even. But by adding this ReDrum part here, this is kind of tying this stuff a little bit more to the beat. So it kind of sounds like a shifted beat thing. So I'll play it for you now. Now, I also have an added thing I should show you. I have it being sent to here through the sends in the mixer. Send to is the echo box. So I do have what amounts to being like a delay, a rhythmic delay on this that is synchronized with the beat. So you'll be hearing that too. This first pattern's without the kick and snare, the second one is with. Alright, then I have the right side here because I was looping it as I was making it. But I'm going to move this stuff back a bit because I'm going to make it a little longer. I'm going to keep working on this thing as we go through the series. Okay, let's move the right side back. What I'm going to do here is put in, I think maybe like a 2-bar break. And so I need to make sure this track's selected. And it should paste these up here. Good. And then it'll come back to this stuff. Here we are with the second pattern in. Might as well do the whole section. Second pattern in, or actually no. Let's just do the second pattern in the other stuff. And let's copy. Paste here. And now I could shorten this pattern length since it's bar by bar. Or 4 bars. It's a 64-step pattern. I could shorten it to fit just this. So now, let's hear it towards the end of this and hear that break. I'm feeling that break's a little long. Oh, it didn't get to this break. The right side of the loop's here, and I had loop on. Move that over, and actually, let's turn off loop too. Okay, so here we are, one more time. Two bars is good. Now here comes back. And then what I'm probably going to do is change up the groove a little bit here, put in a third pattern, and keep this stuff going. But we also need more instruments. So now that we've covered ReDrum, I think what I'm going to do next time is show you some basic synthesis with Subtractor, because I think a bass sound will be good to have in next. Get the groove going. So Subtractor can be used to make all types of sounds, but I like to use it for making bass sounds. So that will be next time, and this will give you some basic fundamentals of synthesis and how it looks in a fairly standard looking plugin. Here, I'll load it up, for example. Let's move it down here. Oh, I gotta go over here to do that. There we go. Let's check the rack. All right, here's how it looks in the rack. I'm gonna move it down. So you gotta remember what you have selected when you add something new. And it moved its channel down with it. Good. And let's check up here in the mixer. Should be this track here. I'm not sure about ambient rhythm. Bass guitar. No. So let me move it over so it's lined up with below. See, bass guitar is the default sound that comes up first with Subtractor. So this is where we're going next time. Okay, so I'll see you then.